So, okay, thinking of a couple of encounters that had a really big impact on me in this territory. Third Angel made a show in 2002 called Where Have They Hidden All the Answers? And the show was partly inspired by the people, you don't see them as much anymore, but market researchers who you would see on the pedestrianised bit of the high street. They've got their clipboards and they're looking for people, but they have a list of people they need to tick off. So there's a point where, like, I used to really like being interviewed by them, partly because you got free stuff a lot of the time, but partly because I think of myself as a not typical demographic in what my tastes are and what I'm interested in. So I liked giving my opinion about stuff. But they, if they've already got you on the list, then they just look past you, and I really liked that. I'm interested in that as a performance behaviour. So it was partly about those, and it was also about urban legends and how much evidence you need to show someone for them to believe what you're telling with them, that you just happen to be showing them a map or a photograph at the same time. So we're really interested in those things, and what that became was an interview, a market research interview, in which you were told a story and shown evidence of where and when it happened, and then you were asked what you thought of the story, and then you were asked if you could give a similar story back. So we had a big book of 10 absolutely classic urban legends, and we used family photographs and photocopies of maps and claimed it was real. And then we had questionnaire forms that were printed in a duplicate pad, so you got a copy. So it looked really official, and we wore suits. We looked really smart, and people could book in for an interview without knowing what it was, or we would go out and find people and invite them in. But the first time we did that was at we did a tryout of it at the Green Room in Manchester, and then we did it at the National Review of Live Art in Glasgow, and they're both quite an art audience. And then we did it in a room in a gallery in Nottingham, but it was slightly off to one side. And so although it was in a gallery, it was a much more public, an audience that was more like the public at large, I suppose. And a guy came in and sat with me, and I told him my story, and he didn't really look at me while I was telling him the story. But then he answered the questions, and then I said, and some people would call that sort of story an urban legend, and I wondered if you know any stories like that. And he said, no, I don't know any stories like that. But I will tell you about the most important day of my life, if you like. And I said, yeah, of course, I'd like to know about that. And this guy was in his 50s, I think. And he told me that when he was a kid, his mum was really ill and got to the point where she wasn't going upstairs to bed anymore. She just slept on the sofa the whole time. He was about 7 or 8. And his aunt came to stay with him because his mum was really ill. And he came down one morning and his aunt told him that his mum had died in the night. And he looked at the sofa and he could see that his mum was lying under a blanket, but he could see a hand sticking out from under the blanket. And what he wanted to do more than anything was to go and hold his mum's hand. And his aunt said, you've got to go and get the doctor. You must go now and get the doctor. And he ran and he got the doctor. And when he came back, his mum's hand had been tucked away under the blanket, and there were other people in the house, and he never got to hold his mum's hand. And he said, there isn't a day of my life that goes by where I don't think about that, and I regret it every single day. And that was the most important day of my life. and I was like, I was really moved. I wasn't expecting that story, and I said, "Are you happy for me to tell other people that story?" And he said, "Yes, I wouldn't have told it you if I wasn't." And I remember asking him to sign a permission thing, and I can't even remember if he did or not. It felt really. It's partly because that was the frame of the show. We would ask for a signature to say, yes, you can use it, and it also feels like it protects us. But he'd told me the story. He'd said, "I'm happy for you to tell it. I wouldn't have told it you otherwise." So it felt like we had the contract. We had an understanding. And he left, and I went and told Rachel, who was that show had one performer inside and one performer outside the space, and went and told Rachel what had happened. And I think we might have articulated this beforehand, but that really made it clear to me that whatever our invitation is, whatever story you want to tell me as the audience member in response to the prompt I've given, that's the story that we want to hear. And then that influenced the way we make work, the way we teach performance. It's like this is the question I'm asking you to respond to, this is the performance prompt. Whatever thought that puts in your head, that's the right thing. And it allows for a greater variety of responses. So that's as a maker, that was really significant, I think. And as an audience member or a participant, playing role-playing games as a teenager was massively important and something I've returned to in recent years. But role-playing games as structures where there are rules, and there are sometimes quite big rule books for you to go and refer to and go, is this allowed or not? But what they actually are is a framework for people to be creative within them, and everyone plays, every group plays Dungeons and Dragons or Blades in the Dark or Vaesen or whatever system you're playing. Every group plays it differently, and quite often the same group will play the same rule system slightly differently because someone else is running it or because of the story being told. So that sense of a really clear set of rules and structure or mechanism for storytelling, and quite often a very well-defined world or mythos, but then freedom to create characters and tell your own stories within that. I think I probably didn't realise till my 30s how important that had been to the sort of theatre I wanted to make and that sort of storytelling. So, I think that's probably quite significant.